Aloha and welcome to another episode of Hawaii Food and Farmers Series. We're here every Thursday thanks to Think Tech. You can always join the conversation at Think Tech High on Twitter. Really quickly before we begin, I want to do a quick announcement about an event ag-related being put on by TEDx Honolulu on March 15th at UH about the future of agriculture in Hawaii. We'll have 3 different panelists talking about where we stand with growing food here, how we are incorporating technology, how we're incorporating a cultural and indigenous perspective as well, and what the future of food looks like in the next couple generations, which is relevant to our show here. Every week we bring on farmers or other folks in the food and local food system and get their background to find out why they do, what kind of motivated them, and what they see for the future of food in Hawaii. And there's so many dynamic people and roles that are played, and so we have an especially exciting guest today that Matthew Johnson, my co-host, is going to introduce.
Right on. Thank you, Justine. And also, if you want to join the conversation, please feel free to tweet us at ThinkTechHI. And also let you know that the show will be on YouTube later at ThinkTechHI on YouTube. So, without any further ado, our guest today is Catherine Toth from the HONOLULU Magazine. So, we were talking earlier, it's our first writer, journalist, foodie. She also has a blog called The Cat Dish. So thank you, Catherine, for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for
Very
having
excited
me.
to actually finally meet you, too.
Oh, that's right.
You're one of those people I'm like, everyone's like, oh, yeah, you know Catherine. I'm like, no, I don't know Catherine.
But I kind of do know you.
I know. Like,
that's weird.
Yeah, good friends with your husband, Kai, who
Right.
will also be on the show at some point, too.
Really?
Well,
Does he know this?
That's our plan. That's our plan.
He was supposed to be on today with you, but
I know.
So we'll let him off the hook today.
I was going to overshine him, so he knows.
This is true. So we're glad to have you, and he can have his own show another time.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
So Catherine, why don't you give us a little background? So yeah, now you're with HONOLULU Magazine, a relatively new gig for you. But
Yes.
We always like to start with a little bit of background on who is Catherine and what is your background and how did you get to become so interested in writing about food and farms?
Yeah, it's such a crazy story. So I was born and raised on Oahu, actually Kalihi Valley specifically, and I've been at Honolulu Magazine since only November, actually, as a food and dining editor, but I've freelanced for them for about 10 years.
Okay.
So my journalism background actually is in newspapers. So I was a newspaper reporter for about 10 years. And then I went off to work at the Nature Conservancy.
Okay.
People don't really know that about me, but anyway, I did that. It was great
do
fun.
now.
I know, everybody knows. And then after that, I had always been teaching at different community colleges and at UH since about 2001, teaching journalism. So at that time, I made the transition from writing full-time to teaching full-time and then writing part-time. So I taught for about full-time for maybe like 4 or 5 years and built up a freelance base that way. And then I made the very scary leap into freelance, and I started freelancing for about 4 or 5 years before taking this job. Yeah, so they brought me out of like freelance life.
Yeah,
they did.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so were you always focused on food, or how did
No.
that become your kind of niche?
Well, I don't even know how I became a journalist, actually, because my whole, like, I wanted to just write the great American novel, and I was an English major at UH, but when I was there, I started writing for the campus paper, as you would do, and I highly recommend my students to do that as well. Great experience. My interest was always in sports, so when I was at the Kaleo, I was a sports editor, and that's where, I mean, I played sports my whole life, I've watched sports my whole life, I love it. So, and there's so much drama in sports, you know, yeah. So I really love that genre of writing. Started working at the Star Bulletin in the sports department. Then I went off to Northwestern to get my master's degree in journalism. And while I was there, I joined the magazine program there. So I learned a lot about the design, editing, just a full production of a magazine. I really loved it. And when I came home, it was like, you're pretty much going to take whatever job comes your way. There was nothing available in sports. I ended up in feature writing, which is similar to sports, and I loved it. And that's what happened. How I got into food, though, is like kind of random. So when I was with the Honolulu Advertiser in the features section, we launched blogs. And back then, like, no one knew what a blog was. This was 10 years ago. Like, there was no Facebook and Instagram. So they sort of looked, like, our editors looked around the newsroom and, like, pointed at the youngest people that might know what a blog is. And so I got assigned to write the lifestyle blog, which essentially at the time was don't write about government, sports or parenting and business, but I could write about anything else. And so I wrote about reality TV and relationships. I really didn't have a focus. And then one day I decided to post photos of what I ate for lunch, like on a Friday. Honestly, that's how.
You're like, I've got nothing to talk about. What
horrible.
am I gonna do?
Like, it was so horrible. It wasn't a new restaurant. It was just like, oh, this is what I ate for lunch today. And we saw a spike
like peanut
in
butter and jelly.
No, I mean, I went out. I didn't make my life. No. I actually went somewhere in downtown and I posted these pictures on a Friday. And we saw a spike in interest there. So I went to my editor and I was like, I think we should do like a food blog. This is before Yelp and this is really before the advent of food blogging. And, at the time, nobody wanted to take on extra work. So they're like, well, you're doing such a good job at it. Just keep doing it. And that's literally what I did. So every Friday I just posted like whatever I had for lunch that day. And then it became like, well, I think I should be more thoughtful about this approach. And that's literally how I got into food writing.
Wait,
It's that random.
So you kind of, are you saying that you kind of created this whole
No.
genre of people taking pictures of their food?
No, yeah, right.
That's what I just heard.
Yeah,
I don't know about everyone else.
Well, no, I don't get any residual payment from that, but no, but I don't know if people were necessarily doing that because there wasn't the platforms we have now with social media. So I'm sure people were taking pictures of their food and just there was no way to get it out there. Do you know what I mean? And now there's just such a plethora of ways to share that information. So I don't know.
Well,
Don't judge. I feel judged right now.
Just claim it and own it. Yeah, be proud of it.
Well, it's part of I'm half Japanese, so I think it's like my cultural obligation to take pictures of my food, right? That's what we do. Anyway, so that's how it all happened. So, yeah.
So then how did your kind of niche then fall into place here with Honolulu Magazine versus the newspaper then? Maybe any difference in...
I never envisioned I would ever be a food writer. So I've been a lifetime eater, like food a lot.
Like most people.
Just saying. My family, we cook and bake all the time, but it's not, I was never a cook in a restaurant or anything like that. My mentor was John Heckathorn. So I've known John since I was a kid. And he was the editor of Honolulu Magazine for a long time, and then he was the food editor. That was his last sort of incarnation at the magazine. And it was a job he sort of embodied fully. Everyone knew John and food. It was like the same sentence. And then he passed away, and then Martha Chang became the food editor and following him. And then she went off to do freelance work. And so I'm like the third food editor for Honolulu Magazine. And I was a little intimidated to follow in the footsteps of those two. But a part of me thought it was kind of cool that it was like John's old post and everyone was so fond of John and he did so much for, the industry and he was such a phenomenal writer. To have him be my mentor and now taking that post, it's just a nice, it feels good. I don't feel worthy, to be honest. A lot of times I always tell people like I'm not an expert in food. I'm not a food snob either. Like I will eat just about anything. I do like fast food. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, but I did. Anyway, but I pretty much eat anything. So it is a weird position for me to be in sometimes because sometimes I don't feel like I know enough about food. And but I'm a reporter by training, so I know that if I report stories and I talk to people and I get their story and I share that, I think that's my job. So. Yeah.
What's interesting thing about food is it's so universal and everyone's going to have their own experience with it or their own kind of perspective and opinion.
Everyone is so opinionated when it comes to food. It's crazy.
Well, that was interesting. Before the show, you were talking about, we were asking, like, do people respond to the articles that are obviously going online? Yeah, and so everybody has an opinion. So what's that like?
To be judged all the time? Yeah, it's fun. No.
Well, do they jump? They start judging you based on like your experience.
Oh, sure. But that's. I think that's just common for anybody in social media and journalism. When I was at the paper, I wrote a column. I was one of 4 writers. I wrote a column called About Women, and essentially wrote about issues that we deal with as women. And I was single. I had a file folder about this thick. I still have it. I called it my TRO file of all the hate email and letters that I would get from people. So I'm pretty used to sort of being not hated on, but people just have very strong opinions about anything, everything. And I think food is one of those. It's a great way to bring people together. We all love to sit around and eat food. We talk about food. It becomes a focal point at gatherings, and so of course people have opinions. Like. everybody has their favorite, plate lunch place or their favorite fried rice or their favorite local moco, and they get pretty defensive about it. So if I come out and say, these are my top 5, burger places in Hawaii, oh, yeah, I will get hate email from that. Yes, yeah.
Well, we'll come back to that for sure. I got some more questions on that. But how you tie in with the farms as well. So one of our past guests was that 2 weeks ago when we had Kerry from Metro Girl Honolulu was on the show.
Yeah.
And he was featured in, I guess, the last Honolulu Magazine. Was that in January?
I wrote about him for our Biting Commentary blog, which is on our website. Yeah, I've known Kerry for a while. So I've done some work with Mari's Gardens, which is an 18-acre aquaponic and hydroponic farm in Mililani, where my husband worked as an aquaculture specialist. And I did some work for them. And that's what I think, I always knew about hydroponics and aquaponics, but I feel like when I met Kai and then working on that farm for a little bit, I really fully began to understand just the scope of it and the how it's so impactful, this idea of soilless ag or different methods of farming that are more sustainable. And so I met Kerry there, and because of, I think, that experience, and because I had also been part of the agriculture leadership program, which I know you're an alum, it's really, I really see the connection between, what we eat at a restaurant and where that food came from. And I know that's been a mantra for a lot of farmers and a lot of chefs, right, is everyone should know where your food is coming from. And I feel like I've seen all of that. So what I'm hoping to do with Honolulu Magazine is bring a little bit of that ag reporting to it. Not that they don't cover agriculture, I mean they do, but I really want to show that there's a distinct connection between the food coverage and our agricultural coverage. So that's something I've been doing on the blog. I think once a month I do a Farm Friday. So like my food blog, actually, maybe it'll take off like that. Anyway, where I highlight a farm, and so I highlighted Kerry Kakazu's Metro Girl. Super cool. Have you been?
I did. I got to. He just did an open house. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's so many different angles you can take food when you're writing about it. So I think we're going to talk a little bit more about these kind of specific directions you're going, but we're going to take a quick 1-minute break first.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Aloha, my name is Kirsten Baumgart Turner, and I'm the host of Sustainable Hawaii at thinktechhawaii.com. We air live on the internet and also on Oceanic Channel 16. I'd invite you to come for a fresh new show every Tuesday from 12 to 1 o'clock. I try to bring on guests that give us a different viewpoint on aspects of sustainability in Hawaii, as well as trying to unpack some of the difficult concepts of measuring and achieving sustainability, particularly with regard to sustainable economic growth and prosperity in Hawaii. Please join us every Tuesday from 12 to 1 p.m. Mahalo, aloha.
Aloha! Hello, my name is Patrick Bratton. I'm host at Global Connections here at ThinkTech Hawaii. We broadcast live every Thursday at 1 p.m. We bring Hawaii to the world and the world to Hawaii, talking about international events and various things of interest to the audience. Please join me. I look forward to talking with you and having you get to meet some of my guests. Aloha.
Aloha and welcome back to the Hawaii Food and Farmers series. I'm your co-host Justine Espiritu. This is my co-host Matthew Johnson. Today's guest is Catherine, who is a writer, is the food and dining editor of Honolulu Magazine. So, yeah, we were
confident with that last name, weren't you?
Fox.
We could tell you.
Fox. Cat Fox.
Okay. Cat Fox.
That's right. Yeah.
So we were talking about, all the different kind of directions you can go with food. And so you're the third person in this role as food editor. Can you kind of say, and you mentioned, so Fridays you're doing like a farm feature. What else kind of directs you to decide what you're going to write about?
That's a complicated question. So we plan out our magazine a couple of months in advance. So right now we're working on we're finishing up our May issue. So we're always thinking kind of 2 months ahead or a season ahead, and that's always tricky, right? Because what do people care about like this summer? I mean, I have to figure it out now.
That's how we plan our show.
Yeah, right.
A couple
months
months
in
in
advance.
advance.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I got the message last month. Right. So anyway, so that's always tricky. So we have a team we have a staff, about 8 or 10 of us, that get together and we discuss, we brainstorm ideas. It's pretty much up to me to come up with like pitches for the next few months and what would be interesting. Primarily, our coverage has been on dining. So I do a lot of restaurant reviews. That's a real focus of our magazine. But we have this blog, and on the blog, not that I can do whatever I want, because my editor is probably cringing right now when I say that, but there's a lot more flexibility and leeway, primarily because one, the platform is just so easy to publish, right? I can write a story now and publish it like in 10 minutes, versus a magazine which takes 2 months to produce and publish and circulate. So that's one. And two, our web audience is a little bit different from our magazine audience. The print and web is always a little different. And so it's fun to experiment on our website. So it's HONOLULUmagazine.com. And if you want to go directly to our dining coverage, it's just /dining. And we see that even within our web community, that food is a big, that's a real strong interest point for them. So if we look at our web coverage or our stories for a month, I mean, half of those top 10 stories will be related to food in some way. So what's nice for me is I can write stories about ag or whatever and just get a gauge on the interest. So I can see like, people interested in farms, or are people interested in like chocolate. Actually, people are very interested in chocolate. I just want to say it's one of our top chocolate first looks, or when we go to a restaurant for the first time and review it. That's really popular. But we also see people are interested in ag stories. So right now I've just done profiles. I did Sweetland Farm in out by the Petersons farm in Wahiwa, and it's a goat farm.
Oh,
yeah, super fun. So I went out there, toured it. I did Carrie Kakazu, Metro Grow. I'm doing Small Kind Farms with Yang. Has Yang been on the show?
He was our first guest.
First ever?
Yep.
That's amazing. Is he well behaved?
No.
Oh yeah, I figured. Anyway, so I mean, I had gone out and checked. I'm just saying, Yang is. Yeah. We call him Yangers.
We call him Yang Bang.
That's
You got Yang Banged.
Very good. I'm going to use that actually.
He was with the Ag Leadership Group,
He's
right?
in the same cohort as me.
Yeah.
So that's actually how I first met him. Yeah. So I know him, and you know how it is with Ag Leadership. You get to know people in a different way.
Oh yeah.
Just saying. There's a lot of alcohol.
Not
me, but Yang.
Of course not.
No. I don't.
Everyone else.
Yeah, not me. I'm really responsible. Anyway, so because of that, I think we can gauge the interest, and I feel like people are interested in farms. They are interested in to know where their food comes from. So we'll see. Hopefully that does translates to more print coverage.
Well, then I'm curious, has that been a transition, we talk about the movement of eating local, has that changed through what's being published in the magazines? This whole agriculture, the tying the agriculture and the farms to the dining experience? Because there's tons of of course, there's endless amounts of restaurants that aren't local focused.
Right.
But have your readers, that's been the drive recently, or what's that trend?
I mean, I think that's we go where the trends are, right? So, and not to say that a magazine can't start a trend, we certainly can, but you'll see in restaurants, I mean, there's much more emphasis, especially after the Hawaii regional cuisine movement, like 25 plus years ago, that there is an emphasis in supporting local agriculture, in showcasing more of our local ingredients. So we see that with restaurants. I mean, if a chain restaurant like Zippy's is doing that and really putting an emphasis on purchasing local, I mean, Kunia Country Farm supplies, I think, all of their greens at this point, which is really awesome. And they grow their stuff aquaponically, which is even super cooler. And they do, I think Zippy's does use the local beef as well.
Chili,
yeah.
Well, then I was just talking to the kids at FFA, and they're telling me Mari's Garden is going to start supplying to McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald's.
And Costco.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, have you been to the farm lately? They have these like 3 state-of-the-art, super fancy greenhouses. So they're going to churn out like tens of thousands of heads of lettuce a month. So if they're doing that for McDonald's, I mean, this is great. So you see that there is demand for local produce and local food. And you would know you're with the Walk Fresh. Can we say that? Well, I just did. Anyway.
Say it as much as possible. I'm not in disguise.
No, I don't know. I didn't get prepped before this. Anyway, whatever.
What were we doing out before?
I know. We were eating Girl Scout cookies is what we were doing before, to be honest.
Let's be real.
That's
our version of prep. Eating Girl Scout cookies.
Anyway, we've got to know each other really well. So what I'm saying, there is a demand for it, and I think what it comes down to are things like, I think the consumer is looking for accessibility. Can I get these products quick and easy? So with CSAs, I mean, there's an ease to it, but then also I can't get all my stuff in a CSA box. I still have to go to a grocery store. The other one is affordability, and we've seen that. People say, I complain all the time that local is more expensive. It's more expensive to produce, and so that gets passed on to the consumer. And then the last one is, I mean, does it taste good? And I think we know local tastes better. I mean, you had Yang on the show. Like, he was telling me how some customer came up to him and was like, this is not portobello mushrooms. And he's like, yeah, it is. And he said, the guy flipped it over and was like, the gills are pink. Like, portobello mushrooms have black gills. And so Yang said, yeah, because they're like a week old. Yeah, that's why. Yeah. But I mean, think about it. We don't even know what is fresh. That's really frightening. Yeah. So it comes, and if it tastes good. So I think that's the challenge with the beef industry here, is that a lot of people don't like the flavor of local beef.
It's just unfamiliar to them.
Right, it's just unfamiliar. And so they're going to choose something they're more familiar with. Or, the real, I guess, challenge with aquaponic farmers is the fish crops. So like tilapia, for example, it's really difficult to create this market to sell tilapia to local people. I mean, there's an ethnic market for sure, but like my parents grew up thinking tilapia was alawai fish, and it's hard to break that, that connotation for them. So there's a challenge there.
So is there a role for journalists, or do you feel a sense of responsibility of, when you're introducing a restaurant or introducing a dish?
Well, now I do. Thanks a lot.
You can kind of shape that lens for readers that are kind of thinking about something for the first time. So, I mean, I feel like if I were a writer, I'd just want to be like warm and fuzzy, everything's great. Yeah. But how does that work for you?
So you want to be a food critic?
I want to be a food critic.
You'd be like, just a food lover.
I mean, yeah, food lover.
Yeah, a food aficionado. Well, for me, I mean, there's a story in all of this, right? So the farmers have stories, and restaurants have stories, and everybody sort of has a purpose. I mean, I should not come into a job, especially in journalism, with a specific point of view that is my own, that I'm going to shape content, because we're trained to be, to be objective and to tell stories. But, that is the story. I mean, there is a story when you have those last sugar plantation closing, or you have, farmers that are trying new things and trying to be more sustainable, or you have consumers that are demanding local produce, or you have chefs that are showcasing it. I mean, I don't have to have an agenda. I mean, that is what it is, and so that's what's nice. I feel like there's so much discussion about local food and where food comes from and farm to table, and I mean, that's even becoming cliche in and of itself, but there is that interest. It's right there, and people are talking about it, and all I have to do is kind of share that story or spotlight these trends that are happening. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
But even before the whole local movement, I mean, chefs and restaurants using freshest ingredients. I mean, it's kind of like they were doing a local thing before there was a propaganda about it.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about our history, we used to have slaughterhouses. We used to have we used to have fresh poultry. And what's been happening, we used to have dairy. We don't have dairy anymore, and so we don't have these things anymore. And I think the Department of Agriculture just came out with a report that showed how the landscape for agriculture has changed. And it is, it's sad, and it's frightening, and I think it's happening all over the place. And I do think, when my family was growing up here, I mean, you kind of grew things in your own backyard, and you never really thought about farm to table. But I think it comes down to really affordability. You have the big boxes that come in, the Costco's and the Walmarts that are selling stuff that's much, much cheaper than buying an aquaponically grown head of lettuce from Mari's Gardens or something. But we forget the quality. We forget what is sustainable, meaning how far did this travel to get to on my plate. But that discussion's happening, right? So we're talking about it more, and that's great. So I think we've gone one way and we've gone this way, and now we're kind of coming back and maybe finding a middle ground, because it's becoming critical. We have to do something about it. We have to be more sustainable. I mean, we're fishing out our waters, and so there's a lot of, I think, real issues that are happening that people need to start paying attention to finally. Yeah.
And that's what's neat about your role as a journalist, because there's always a big part of you can grow the best food and you can have the best farmers and all that, but there's still that education, or people need to know about why they need to be eating local and what are the benefits to it. And that's why I feel that that's part of what you're doing. It's part of your, even though you don't have an agenda, but you're still kind of putting it out there to people that maybe wouldn't normally know about it or care about it.
True, but they have to read the magazine, so you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but I will say that social media has really been helpful in that regard. So in other words, instead of having to go to a journalist to get your story out, I mean, you can just go on Twitter and do it. You can go on Instagram and do it. You can go on Facebook and do it. So you're seeing a lot of chefs, a lot of farmers really taking advantage of these free platforms to get their messaging out. And I feel like that's a really powerful thing. Because if you have like an Ed Kenny and he's Instagramming like him in the Lo'i and he's like, hey, this is going to be on my table at Mudhead Water, people are going to look at that and be like, oh, that's cool. I want to do that. So, you kind of build this groundswell of excitement and interest, right? So I feel like social media actually helps a lot. Not like a lot more than we do as journalists, but
right, that's not like is Instagram putting you out of a job if chefs are able to to do that?
Maybe, no, I don't know.
Oh, I think it's just complimenting. I mean, because you're talking about before, like you get to use a blog as what you do because the articles that you write for the magazine takes a couple of months to curate, but then you have this more instant kind of put information out there and then you get this instantaneous feedback. So obviously if there's something happening or you don't even know how people react, that's a good way to test it out, just like a farm can do or a restaurant can do or a CSA can do.
The nice thing about having farmers and restaurants and others sort of nonprofits use these platforms is that they can get their message out a lot quicker, a lot faster, and a lot more often. So I can blog about Small Kind Farm in Waimanalo this Friday, but I'm not going to blog about them next week or the week after. I mean, I blog it, it's there, and you can find it, and it lives forever on the internet, as we know. But Yang can post all the time, and he can promote his mushrooms all the time, where he's selling them, and the different value-added, products that he's coming out with. So that, like you said, it does enhance it. It does sort of like keep that conversation going a lot longer than just a story that I'm writing that lives for a while. You know what I mean? That's I think the real power there. And I feel like farmers, and I know they don't want to do this because they're farming, and chefs, they're cooking, but this is a real opportunity for them, I feel, is to just take advantage of social media. People are looking for this information. They really, really are. And this month is Localicious month, by the way. Localicious Hawaii started March 1st, so another great opportunity.
About that. What is that?
So, man, you're putting me on the spot here.
Anyway,
it's part of the
Well,
Hawaii
let's actually take
Are we
a
taking a
quick
break? Thank you. I can go Google it now.
Gather your thoughts, and we'll be right back.
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. My name is Anu Hitchell, and I host the show called Climate Change Beyond Outrage. We go beyond outrage to find solutions to climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. I hope you will join me here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We broadcast live from thinktechhawaii.com. Aloha and bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen, host of Likeable Science on Think Tech Hawaii. Come join us every Friday at 2 p.m. when I interview interesting scientists about what they do, why they do it, and why we should all care about it. It's a lot of fun to see. We hear, and you can learn interesting stuff. You'll hear all kinds of fascinating science, and we know you'll have a great time. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
Oh, thanks.
Aloha, and welcome back to our final segment for today's episode of Hawaii Food and Farmers, where we feature our food producers as well as organizations and individuals that are a part of our local food system here on Hawaii. I'm your co-host, Justine. This is my co-host, Matthew Johnson, and this is our lovely guest, food and dining editor of Honolulu Magazine, Toth Fox.
Yes.
Yay! We'll just drop the Toth and stick with Fox.
You were about to tell us about Localicious.
Oh, Localicious Hawaii. So localicious.hawaii.com if you're interested. It's a program with the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation. So during the month of March, participating restaurants will offer a dish that's using local ingredients. So highlights a local ingredient or ingredients. And $1 from each dish goes to support ag education. That's super cool. And so, like, there's restaurants. If you collect like over $500 that month, you can adopt a school, which is really neat. Yeah. So it's it's really getting ag education in like classrooms of like public schools. So I mean, you're gonna eat anyway. You may as well like look at the list of. I think there's like 148 participating restaurants across all the islands. And you can go and like pick like their menu, and they'll have very nice, and just support local. you're supporting a local restaurant, and then you're supporting ag education, and you're supporting a local farmer. I mean, I feel like it's a no-brainer.
What else is there? Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
Well, they could give us money too, I guess.
Oh, that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
That's another show, yeah. Anyway, that's Localicious Hawaii, so check it
Awesome.
out.
So I want to go back to the Ag Leadership Program.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting as a writer. Are there other folks in different industries are part of it? Are you the only non-farmer, or what's the mix of the?
I'm not the only
cohort?
non-farmer, but I was the first writer, I think. And in my application, I made a case that it was important. Like you said, it was important for, if we're talking about really having a discussion and affecting change, I thought, well, why don't you have a journalist on there? Because, we can influence public opinion and we can help shape that and actually start and engage in that discussion. So that was my whole application. It was like, hey, I know I have really no, real tangible experience in farming, except, I garden. And I'm married to somebody who knows a lot about farming. But I felt like this is a great opportunity to educate a journalist who can then go out and tell these stories. So it made a lot of sense to me. Yeah, so that's why I did it. Well, you weren't in the program.
Yeah, but I'm not the guest on the show.
But
so
you're
we're
not a
gonna talk
farmer.
about
I
it.
know, but it's just, you're
Yeah,
not a
well, no,
farmer.
I mean, that's what's neat about the program, Ag Leadership. I'm getting the two mixed up. Ag Leadership Foundation.
Yeah.
The whole idea is bringing on different groups. So you have the ranchers and the growers, but then there's this whole supporting industries around it. So that's great that you have it on there. And it's a good segue now and kind of talking about, looking forward, like the future of local ag, like how do we make it stronger and better? But how do you see journalism and people like you with your role with blogging and social media, like where do you see this going and what's your vision for the future of writing about food and farmers?
Well, gee, okay.
Yeah, we're going big.
Man, so much pressure.
We got Girl Scout cookies.
I know, we do. Thin Mints too, they're the best, right?
Thank you for bringing those.
You're welcome. Where do I see? So I feel like it's still important to have the discussion, and I think as we move forward in this discussion, there'll become more focused discussions on really what can we do and what, this is a discussion that needs to happen at every level. So families should have this discussion, right? Classrooms should have this discussion. Legislators should have this discussion, And at every stage of the game, we have to start making decisions that are gonna affect change. So, you can only start with yourself, and you should all, make conscious choices to support ag. But I think there also needs to be an understanding of what sustainability means, for example. It's a great buzzword. We all talk about it. And it wasn't until I met this guy named, I don't know if you know, did you come to our conference at Mari's Gardens, the Soilless Ag Conference? How come you didn't come? You were invited.
Wow, now you're
on the
putting me on the spot.
I thought you were
Jeez.
invited. Anyway, it was a Soilless Agriculture We brought this guy named Dr. Marty Matlock from the University of Arkansas. He's the director of the Office of Sustainability. And he really explains sustainability in a way that made total sense to me. So I'll give you an example of what it is. So he's looking at sustainable is not just like organic or it's a whole gamut of things that include like labor costs or water usage or energy use, how far things travel to get there and how things are grown. So for example, if you went to a grocery store and you can buy an organic avocado from Mexico versus a non-organic avocado, but it was from like Eva. Which one would you pick? And a lot of people might think organic, better for you. Right. But actually what's more sustainable is a non-organic avocado from nearby. So it's really kind of shifting that paradigm, right, in a way to look at, what is sustainable, how should we be making choices? Educating people that way. So my job as a reporter, I can definitely do that, but this discussion needs to happen and these choices need to be made with each individual. Do you know what I mean? And that's going to really create that swell of change, I feel.
But also, it can't really be like, here's a situation and it's always gonna be the non-organic local piece. I think every kind of community is gonna have their own factors that influence what makes their situation the most sustainable. As an island here in Hawaii, it's going to be different than what is sustainable necessarily in California.
Oh, for sure, because there are things we can't grow here, right? So we're always going to rely on the importing of certain things, right? Food products, always. We can't grow wheat, right? Or rice or whatever. But it's just making better, more conscious decisions. And I think chefs are doing it. I think they're trying to do it. You talk to a lot of the new chefs and they like to tout that they use 80 to 90% local ingredients, and they're really trying to work with farmers and build relationships. And I've seen that at Mari's Gardens. Lots of chefs come out and they're really interested in purchasing local. But there's also there's a challenge with farms. I feel businesses in general struggle here for lots of different reasons, but farmers in particular, there's a lot of cost in land, there's a lot of overhead, energy cost is really high for them. And there's simple things like, I remember talking with a chef who really wanted to use produce from Mari's Gardens, but couldn't drive out there to pick it up, and Mari's couldn't deliver it because it was I know, and that's where CSAs come in. I'm just saying, right? But I'm just saying that's
but those logistics.
Yeah, they both want it, and they're both there and they're both ready to do it, but they couldn't make it work. And I see that, and it's just crushing to me that it could happen.
Well, I think that's what's important, of bringing people together to see where those situations are where both people want it, and what is just the system that can make it happen. And when it becomes a collaborative thing of multiple people wanting that same thing, and then you can kind of do something that's bigger than any two individual organizations can do, when we start to kind of map all that out of what
that actually sounds like a great article, maybe for the HONOLULU Magazine, talking about all these the smaller things that people don't think about until you're actually in it. So these logistics and because people always, the initial question when somebody starts looking into local ag, why is this more expensive than something coming from the mainland? And you're already talking about, things need to be imported and all these other costs. So that would actually be a great article. I don't know how much influence I have in pitching what goes into the HONOLULU Magazine, but I'm just putting it out there.
No, I mean, it's true. And, when we talked about ag leadership, the beauty of that is there's so many different people from so many different aspects of the overall industry, right? So you have people in renewable energy, you had people in land management.
Those were all part of the cohort?
Part of the group, so you're all learning about ag.
There's always a token GMO guy too.
There's always one, and then there was the random person, me and Yang. You have to have one partier in the ag leadership. Anyway, but what I'm saying is that I think that is the model. You can have farmers talk to each other, and you can have chefs talk to each other, but they all need to talk to everyone needs to get in a room and hash this out. And I feel like the Ag Leadership Program is that real model, I think, for how you facilitate productive, effective conversations that lead to change.
So what's the end product or end project of that program?
They didn't have projects. We had projects.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have a capstone project.
Is that
it was a lot of work.
Writing a paper?
Sort of like a proposal for something you want to do. I think it's smart because then you have all these people in your cohort that are giving you input on a project that you want to pursue. But I think you guys didn't have that, right?
I think we're probably the ones that started that idea because we wanted to have a capstone where we all came together, because we had Representative Chris Lee in our group, and then we also had Kai, who is the aquaponic expert guy. So we're how cool would it be to have an aquaponic system in the fountains, in the ponds at the state capitol building?
Yes.
And we were on it. We were we
what happened?
So many nights.
They're gonna have Bellagio fountains or something now.
Probably, yeah. I mean, a whole lot of things happened, but we had a lot of enthusiasm, and we spent many nights just hanging out and talking about it. And we met with Department of General Services, and we were going through the process, and basically we got to a point where I'm talking way too much about this. But
what happened?
Well, it kind of got side-tabled. We all got busy, and we basically found out that it wasn't going to work because it was going to take millions of dollars to fix the ponds and all these kind of
But
things.
it was a good idea.
It was a great idea.
Good effort there.
Yeah,
you should work on that.
I'm kind of disappointed now. Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
since we're not talking about me here, let's give it back to you.
You and your failures.
Shattered dreams.
Shattered dreams. Oh, hashtag.
What was your capstone then?
Oh, I didn't know because I'm not doing it anymore.
Oh,
the program,
okay.
Right? Because I got a job.
Right.
Yeah,
I got a
conflicted.
job.
Yeah, I don't have as much vacation time to do the leisurely 2-week national trip.
Yeah.
They're going to Oregon this year. Isn't that awesome?
No way. Well, that's another cool thing about the program.
You get to do
is you take a trip to Washington D.C. So you meet the legislators there, both the senators and Congress people. And then you get to pick a state that the group wants to go to. So our group went to New Mexico. So you tour around checking out different projects.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because especially with I think the legislative component is fascinating and that's important. So you understand how government works. And I think if you don't understand that, it's hard to navigate. Right? Because didn't you find that when you met and you learned about the legislative process,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, oh, that's why things don't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
That's
check.
why you can't get aquaponics in the ponds.
Right, exactly. You have a great idea, but it doesn't see fruition. But anyway, those are the discussions I feel like you need to have. So Kai had this great idea. I wish we did it. He was like, restaurants should adopt a farm, or farms should adopt a restaurant, or something where you put them together for a full year or so, but really talk out how to make these things work. Like what can, get some kind of grant money to build or finance whatever it is that can sort of get that gap a little bit closer. Do you know what I mean? I think that would be really interesting, and then look at that lesson.
We just make it happen. We'll
You're the CSA guy. Make it happen. Good. Does that mean you're going to finance it?
So after the show,
heard that right, everyone?
We're going to have you back on the show a year from now, and we want to see that project complete. That'll be your capstone. There you go.
No, you finished your capstone first.
Don't push it back on me.
So for concluding thought, since we're out of time, so since you can tell the future as the food and dining editor, what's going to be your feature story this time next year on
this
food
time
and
next
dining?
year?
I like that.
It's going to be on the aquaculture, or the aquaponics at the state capitol. Yep, that's what it's going to be.
All right.
Wow.
So
Right?
we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's gonna, I feel it. It's gonna happen this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. As long as you're on board.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
If you do it, I'll write about it. Guarantee for sure.
Awesome.
Wow.
So it's settled. Look at all the magical things that happen on Hawaii Food and Farmer Series.
Wow. Making things happen.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that concludes our episode. Thank you so much for coming on and bringing the writer, journalist perspective and shaking things up and keeping it exciting.
Yep.
We'll be back here next Thursday and every single Thursday for the rest of your life. Thank you. See you next week.
Thanks. Bye.